about money is so powerful and so written inside of us that it's hard to control and change. And that's the reason why, for me, I wanted to grow my business. But I could not break past a certain amount every month. There was a problem with that. I would have 30, 60 clients, but for some odd reason would always make this one same amount. It was ridiculous. I would bust my butt. I would make tons of YouTube videos. I would do Instagram. I would hire people. I would work night. I would work 12 hours, 16 hours. I would ignore my kids. I would do everything so I could just break through, but I couldn't. So when I did this money formula, I realized my own thing. So when I was a kid, like I said, my parents worked all the time and they worked very hard. And I told this story earlier, is that my dad worked all the time. He made okay money, but he always seemed to reach a plateau. And my mom would hide that money. And she would always judge him for wasting it or blowing it or whatever. It was very contemptuous. And so I realized, okay, what am I going to do? So I went into that first thought, I don't have enough money. And I went to that feeling, I feel bad, I feel guilt, and I feel shame. I'm going, where does this come from? So I went to my mind, and I had this memory of being 10 years old, and I was in the kitchen of our Habitat home, and I remember my parents arguing about money. And it was just arguing, and it wouldn't stop, and I didn't know why. And they would never come to a solution. They would argue about it, but there would never be a resolution. No change, nothing. It was just a thing you did. Fighting about money is something that we do. So then when I went into that feeling, I go, okay. And then I noticed on the wall in my parents' kitchen was this little yellow notepad. And on it was my mom's budget. How much went in and how much went out. You want to know how much went in? The same exact amount that I knew. I literally learned to limit myself because that's all I knew. That's all that my parents ever made. Of course that's all I ever made. Literally the same amount. It blew my mind that I believed subconsciously that this was my limit. Because my mom and dad, that was their limit. This is my limit too. I did not know anybody else in my life, personal to me, who made more than that amount of money. So I believed, I guess that's the way it is. Additionally, I went even further. And I said, okay, why did I feel so guilty? Why did I feel so burdened? Why do I feel like I just can't break through? So I went down, and I was about 4 years old, and I remember that my dad in the Philippines had quit the Air Force. He reached an E3, couldn't get any further. He was frustrated, so he quit. He quit and he left. But the thing was, I learned the pattern that, well, if it gets tough and you don't know what to do, well then you just give up and you find something else. And then you find something else, and you find something else. And so my dad, even though he was a very hard worker, was a job hopper. Constantly going, like me, to every freaking strategy to make more of the same amount of money. I was learning that from him. He didn't imprint that on me. He didn't tell me that I didn't deserve more. He never told me that I wasn't worthy. But I learned to believe that. Just because I love my parents so much, I believe them and trust them. So what they do and what they say must be the truth. Period. So when I learned this, I go, oh, so my dad isn't, my dad's not a bad person with money. My husband's not a bad person with money. Like, we don't have to fight. This is not something that loving couples have to do. You don't have to argue about money. But so many people believe that you have to. I mean, think about that. I believe I have to fight about money. Why? But we do. I want you to take a minute and think about all the richest families in the world. They don't fight about money. We work through it. There was a documentary with the Johnson family. Every year, they all get together. They sit around with their financial plan, and they're like, what do we want to do this year with our money? Do you know any families who actually do that? I did not. So how do we go from this spirit of contention and arguing to collaboration? That first thought and that first feeling. Because if we go in this feeling that, oh, I feel guilty, I feel ashamed, and I don't feel worthy, well then what do? We cut people off, we alienate, right? And we blame. And we go through all these things. And we just do it without even thinking. So when you change this, and I remember when I changed my money formula, I never worried about money. I'd go to the store, I'd spend the thing, whatever. So this is something I want to do with you today, and that's my story and how I was able to change my relationship with money and how I help people to do that. You've heard different stories about money today and their relationship to it, but I want to tell you one more that's quite unique. So I had this client. He was a chief operating officer for a big beverage company, very broad name. If you go to Costco, you'll probably see it. And he came in and he's like, I hate my CEO. He's absolutely horrible, and I want to quit, and I just can't deal with it anymore. And I said to him, and I looked at him and I said, well, whatever you've got going on is connected to a boy. He's about 16, and I feel like he's about to learn to drive, or you're going to buy him a car. And this guy, he's a big guy, he's a handsome guy. He looks like the dad from Incredibles, if you've ever seen that Disney. Big, handsome guy. And he just starts breaking down. He cries and cries. And he says, I was divorced, I have 4 children, and I had custody of the children, but then their mother threatened to commit suicide. And so the children lied in their testimony to the judge and moved in with her because she said, if you don't move with me, I'm going to kill myself. So he went over there, and his son and the other daughter left. I think, yeah, the other ones left. One went to college. And so he just felt this immense burden and immense guilt. I worked with him on changing his relationship with his son in his mind and how he felt about this emotional guilt and grief that he experienced. And so when we finally did, after our last session, I didn't hear back from him for 6 weeks. And he calls me up, or I call him up, and I'm like, hey, I haven't seen you. Where are you? You okay? You fall off the planet or something? And he says, Leslie, you're not going to believe it. After our last session, I felt completely transformed. That my son called me, and he said, Dad, I'm so sorry for what I did. I lied. I want to come and see you again. Will you be open to having time with me? And he said, after that, he didn't have the problem with the CEO anymore. In fact, he quit his job, walked away from a $3 million bonus, and he moved back home, and he was happier than ever. He didn't feel like he had to do that anymore. He didn't feel emotionally burdened to that money and to the job and to the position that he had. So by ultimately changing his relationship in his mind to how he felt about that emotional debt, he released all those things that were holding him to the job he didn't like. So not only are we going to change your relationship with money, we're going to change your concept of what you have to do to get that money. And it's going to be powerful. So I want to teach you some principles about the money formula. And your belief is the powerful attractor, right? So again, what you put your mind on is that ultimate attracting force. And like I said before, we're constantly going back and forth and back and forth. And it's so important that when we look at this, we have to learn to remain disciplined. But we can't if we're constantly feeling the highs and the lows. One day we're feeling good about money and we're like, hey, I saved some money. And the next day, oh, I splurged on some shoes because I feel like I need them. Right? Have you ever, raise your hand if you've ever bought something because you feel like you deserve it, or you're buying it for revenge or whatever.
Retail therapy.
Retail therapy, right? I remember back in the day, I would buy stuff, make huge purchases because my husband made me mad. I don't know, $300. Okay. Why? It made 0 cents, but I did it anyway. Now I don't have to do that anymore, fortunately. So I want you to write down just this one thing. When it comes to wealth and your money, what do you constantly worry about? Just put that on the table. For me, it was a guilt. I just felt bad. It just felt like my husband, like I was somehow going to disappoint him, or I was going to make a mistake, or whatever. He was so hardworking and I'd ruin it or something. For me, it was really a guilt thing. Everybody's different.